Nobody expected it. Not really. Sure, a few scientists saw strange readings, radio bursts from deep space, satellite flickers, but the governments brushed it off. As always, humans don't panic until the fire's already licking their skin. And by the time we realized this wasn't just noise from a distant galaxy, the sky had already begun to burn. They didn't come to talk. They came to conquer. I was under a busted truck when it started. I worked in a military motor pool at Fort Carson, Colorado, just a grease monkey, fixing up old transport units for the U.S. Army. Thought I had a quiet life. I was wrong. It was a Thursday. Clear skies. My buddy Vince was halfway through a dumb story about his ex when the first shadows passed over us. Giant ones. They stretched across the ground like death itself was blocking out the sun. We looked up, and everything changed. The sky was full. Ships. Thousands of them. Heavy, angular monsters floating like they owned the damn air. No ceremony. No announcement. Just arrival. Turns out there were 9,900 of them. 9,900 warships, armed to the teeth, bigger than any human building, with weapons that could wipe cities off the map without even touching them. They weren't here for a friendly handshake. The first blast hit Paris. A second later, Tokyo disappeared. By the time they reached São Paulo, everyone knew this wasn't a movie. They thought we'd fold. They thought we were just apes with guns. But they didn't understand one thing. We've been training for war since the day we learned how to stand upright. And now, for the first time in our blood-soaked history, we had one target, one invader, one cause. You'd be amazed how fast humans can change when survival is the only option. The first 2 days were hell. No coordination, no plan. Entire nations collapsed before noon. Nuclear plants were melted. Oceans boiled. I saw satellite footage of London going dark, just gone. Then something strange happened. We fought back, not just armies, everybody. Farmers in Kansas were building shoulder launchers out of tractor parts. Prisoners were released to fight. Gangs and militias joined hands with old enemies. Tech nerds reprogrammed traffic systems to cause pileups that trapped enemy ground crawlers. I saw a grandmother in Detroit stab an Aurelian scout with a kitchen knife and steal its communicator. You know what happens when you corner a species that spent most of its existence killing itself over land and religion? It turns on you together. I wasn't a soldier, not at first. But I picked up a gun on day 3. I watched my CO vaporized in front of me and took his rifle before his body even hit the dirt. We built trenches outside of Denver using school buses and concrete debris. I learned how to shoot from a blind vet who'd served in Nam. He could smell the alien bastards before we saw them. The aliens called themselves the Aurelians. Arrogant bugs with shiny armor and zero respect for life. Claimed they'd liberated over 40 species from primal chaos. Earth was just their next project. Except this project bit back. Day 6. We shot down our first mothership, took 50 drones and the lives of 200 fighters, but we brought that monster to the ground. People danced on its corpse, took selfies with it. Day 10. We hijacked their tech, turned one of their own ships against them. They never expected that. Week 2. Half their fleet was gone. The other half was in retreat, but we weren't giving them space. Not anymore. We poisoned lakes just so they couldn't harvest water, wired entire suburbs with traps, strapped bombs to rats and let them loose in enemy camps. We didn't fight clean. We didn't fight honorable. We fought like humans, dirty, angry, and relentless. Out of 9,900 ships, only 17 made it out. They limped into orbit, engines smoking, full of holes, and they ran. But here's the thing. We weren't finished. They thought we'd be grateful they left, that we'd count our dead, bury our pride, and move on. But that's not how this works. You don't drop a match in someone's home, walk out halfway through the fire, and expect them to smile. We weren't going to let it end like that. I joined what they started calling the burn teams. Technically, it was a multinational task force of ground assault soldiers and rogue engineers. But we didn't wait around for orders. We hunted down every crash site, every Aurelian outpost left behind, every signal we could trace. We burned them. That's why we got the name. It wasn't about revenge, not for most of us. It was about making sure they never came back. Ever. Earth might have been a backwater to them, but to us, it was the only home we had left. And it was personal now. I'd seen kids with radiation burns, cities smoldering with the smell of melted steel and bodies. My mom's neighborhood was reduced to a hole in the earth, and the only thing we found in the rubble was her wedding ring. So, no, we didn't forgive. We didn't forget. We followed. The 17 ships had gone dark after leaving orbit. Some theorized they were headed back to the main Aurelian command, somewhere in the Trian expanse, light years away. But we had something they didn't expect. One of their own communication cores, pulled from a downed cruiser outside Moscow, and a hacker named Juno, who used to run cyber heists out of Tokyo before the world fell apart. She cracked their language in a week. By the end of that month, we knew where they were headed. Now here's where it gets wild. We didn't have ships, not ones that could cross light years. NASA was gone. SpaceX was rubble. But we had pieces. Alien tech, reverse-engineered circuits, fusion cores from their wreckage. And we had people smart enough and desperate enough to stitch them together. In the ruins of a Texas military base, we built our first starfighter. Ugly as hell, held together with welded rebar and duct tape in some places. But it flew, and it could carry a bomb the size of a van. The Aurelian survivors hadn't even reached their main fleet yet when we sent that first ship out. One of our best, Sergeant Collier, piloted it. Ex-Marine, lost his whole family in Chicago. He took a deep breath, lit a cigar, and flew straight into their convoy. 3 of their warships clustered around a fuel depot floating in the dead dark between galaxies. We lost signal after he breached their shields. 10 minutes later, the feed lit up with a flash so bright it blinded one of our comm-techs. 3 warships. Gone. That was the moment Earth officially took the war to them. We called it the Retaliation Campaign. Our scavenger fleet started growing. We found old orbital platforms, even dragged up deep-sea subs and retrofitted them for low-grav vacuum. Soldiers became pilots. Civilians became command crews. And I, just a grease monkey-turned-fighter, got assigned to the Havoc Spear, a retrofitted alien corvette armed with Earth-made explosives and 6 unshaven maniacs who smelled like burnt coffee and blood. We were going after their command beacon, a relay station deep in their territory, feeding data across their empire. If we could blow it up, they'd go blind, cut off, disorganized. The briefing was simple. Get in, plant the core, and get out. Or don't get out. Just make sure it explodes. We launched in silence. No medals, no press. Just the sound of engines coughing to life, and the quiet voice of my squad leader, Reyes, saying, "Let's make 'em remember Earth wasn't a mistake." I still didn't know what kind of soldier I was. I wasn't trained for deep space combat. I wasn't made for zero-G infiltration. But I knew how to fight, and that was more than enough. We came out of slipspace like a knife through meat, fast, sharp, and with absolutely no grace. The Havoc Spear shuddered, metal groaning under the stress of re-entry into real space. We weren't built for elegance. We were built for one thing: destruction. And right now, we were staring down a structure the size of Manhattan floating in the middle of a crimson nebula. That was the Aurelian command beacon, our target. It was uglier than I'd imagined. Nothing sleek or alien beautiful. Just a tangled mess of towers, dishes, and black spines rotating in slow, deliberate patterns. Thousands of little lights blinked across its hull, each one a crew member. each one someone we were about to make very dead. "Looks like a goddamn space termite nest," said Reyes, adjusting the straps on his chest rig. "Smells like one too," grunted Mace, our demolitions guy, always chewing gum, even in vacuum gear. "No idea where he found it anymore." Juno's voice crackled over the comms. "Beacon is emitting on 8 channels. They've got a pulse net spread across half a system. We take it out, they lose tracking, navigation, and long-range comms. It's like stabbing a brain in the dark." "Then let's make it bleed," Reyes said, slamming his visor down. We hit the thrusters and dropped fast. The Aurelian patrol drones didn't see us coming. They were used to smooth stealth ships, not a patchwork death sled duct-taped together by angry humans. We looked like junk, but junk with teeth. Reyes fired the railgun. The first drone exploded in a flash of orange fire. The second one caught a direct hit from Mace's shoulder launcher and spun out like a dying insect. 2 more blinked to life from the beacon's flanks, swarming toward us. "Cutting gravity!" Juno yelled over the ship-wide channel. I slammed into the ceiling, then floated as the ship lurched sideways. I grabbed the grip rail, heart pounding, watching Reyes manually steer the Havoc spear between 2 antenna towers. We didn't wait to land. At 40 meters above the platform, the bottom hatch dropped open, and Reyes gave the signal. 1 blink from his helmet's LED. "Go." I jumped. It's hard to describe what it feels like, leaping from a ship in the vacuum of space with nothing but a magnetic grappling hook and faith. The stars spun, the beacon's surface rushed toward me, and for a second I swore I saw my reflection in the curve of one of their sensor domes. Then, clang. The hook caught on a maintenance rail, and I slammed into the platform hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. Mace landed next to me, swearing through his helmet. "Next time we ask for a parachute." "You want to talk to command?" I asked, pulling my rifle from its magnetic sling. "Nope." Reyes and Juno hit the deck seconds later. We moved as a unit, cutting across the surface of the beacon like rats in a kitchen. Everything was too clean, too sterile. Their tech was cold, silent. No wires, no hum, just the soft vibration of machinery under our boots and the occasional blinking light from an embedded interface. Juno pulled out her tablet, syncing to the stolen Aurelian signal decoder. "Core's beneath that tower," she pointed. "We blow it. The chain reaction'll toast the whole array." Reyes nodded. "Set charges. Watch for guards." They came sooner than we thought. A pressure door hissed open, and 3 Aurelian soldiers stepped out. Tall, spindly things with armor that shimmered like oil in the dark. No words, no hesitation. They raised their weapons in perfect sync. But we were faster. I dropped to one knee and squeezed off a shot. My bullet tore through the lead Aurelian's skull with a wet crack. Mace lobbed a short-range EMP grenade that knocked the others into a twitching spasm. Reyes didn't waste the moment. He walked up and emptied his sidearm into their twitching bodies. "We weren't here to capture. We weren't here to study. We were here to send a message." Juno reached the core door and started slicing it open. 3 minutes to bypass," she muttered. "That's 3 minutes too long," I said, aiming down the corridor. "Move fast. They know we're here now." We heard the alarms before the lights turned red. They were coming, and we were out of time. The alarms screamed like dying animals. A red glow spilled across the walls of the Aurelian core chamber, pulsing in sync with the tremble beneath our boots. We knew what that meant. Lockdown. Reinforcements. Probably a full squad of those armored freaks, maybe more. But we were already in. Juno's hands were a blur over the cracked tablet screen, connecting wires, plugging adapters into alien sockets, overriding security in a language she barely understood. Her mouth moved constantly, muttering code strings and curses in Japanese and English. Sweat pooled on her brow inside the helmet. Behind her, Mace unpacked the explosives. 2 bricks of compact fusion charges, wrapped tight in a pressure-sealed detonator pack. Homemade, barely tested, highly unstable. Perfect. Timer or remote? Reyes asked. Remote, Mace said. Timer's too risky if we get pinned. I kept my rifle trained on the corridor behind us, listening for footsteps. If you could even call the way Aurelians moved stepping. It was more like the clicking scurry of something half insect, half snake. And when they ran, it was fast. Too fast. Juno let out a breath. I'm in. Core is exposed. We've got 5 minutes before it locks me out again. Do it, Reyes said. Mace, plant the charge. I glanced toward the corridor. The red lights strobed. For a second, all I could hear was the faint hum of alien machinery, like the ship was breathing. Then the sound hit us. A scream. Not human. It echoed through the metal like it came from inside our own bones. A howl of rage and warning, the kind of sound that made you instinctively want to run. I didn't. I crouched down, finger on the trigger. The first wave hit fast. 3 Aurelians rounded the corner. I squeezed off 2 shots, dropping the lead one instantly. Mace whipped around, yelling, and unloaded his sidearm into the second. Reyes caught the third with a knife to the throat. Yes, a knife. Close and brutal. But they weren't alone. A second group emerged from the ceiling vents, literally peeled back the metal like foil and dropped down on us. One landed on Juno, knocking her off the console. I spun and fired, catching it in the side just as it raised a blade-like appendage to strike her. The creature screeched and collapsed, twitching. Juno scrambled back to her feet. We don't have time for this. Mace slapped the explosive charge onto the core, pressing the primer. Ready to blow. Then fall back, Reyes shouted. Back to the launch point. We moved fast, covering each other as we pushed through the corridor. More Aurelians poured in from every angle, walls, ceilings, hidden hatches, like they were part of the ship itself. They didn't hesitate, didn't scream in pain, just attacked over and over. I shot one in the chest, then cracked the stock of my rifle across another's head. Juno tossed a flash grenade behind us, and the hallway lit up like a sun had gone off inside the ship. We ran through the chaos, lungs burning, feet slamming against cold metal. 2 turns left, 1 hallway, then open vacuum. We could see the Havoc spear now, hovering just above the platform outside, hatches wide, engines humming with readiness. She looked like salvation, like home. We were almost there when Reyes took a hit. A plasma bolt slammed into his back, sending him crashing into the wall. He grunted, staggered, and dropped to one knee. Go, he barked. Keep moving. I turned back. Not without you. Another shot flew past my head, and Juno screamed, They're closing the hatch. We've got seconds. Reyes pulled himself up, hand bracing on the wall. Blood trickled from his mouth. You ever disobey a direct order, Briggs? I hesitated. Then I grabbed his arm and pulled. Yeah, I said. First time for everything. Mace laid down suppressing fire as we dragged Reyes toward the ship. Juno climbed in first, slamming the controls to keep the ramp open. We stumbled inside just as the Aurelian soldiers rounded the final corner. They opened fire. The Havoc spear took a hit, shields flaring. Sparks flew across the console. Juno was already triggering launch as Mace smashed the remote detonator. I saw it, out the back window. A bright white light pulsed from inside the beacon. Then the core ruptured. The explosion spread like a shockwave through the nebula, ripping metal apart in slow-motion silence. The beacon was gone. And for the first time since the invasion began, the Aurelians were truly blind. Space looked different after that explosion. There was no sound, not in the vacuum, but I could feel the force of it in my chest. Through the metal walls of the Havoc spear, through the floor, even through the air, I was breathing. The Aurelian beacon, the brain of their communications across this sector, was nothing but twisted wreckage now, drifting through a scarlet nebula like a ghost. For a moment, no one said anything. Reyes was bleeding. Bad. The medpack Juno slapped on his back stopped the worst of it, but he was pale, sweating hard. Mace looked back at the viewport, chewing gum like it was his last meal. "Well," he muttered, "that's one way to ring their doorbell." I sat down against the wall and pulled off my helmet. My lungs burned. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let anyone see that. We should have turned back. That was the plan. Hit the beacon, disable the Aurelian net, and return to Earth. Let the others know the path was open for retaliation. But plans are for people who haven't lost everything. Reyes coughed and looked at me. "We're not done." "Damn right we're not," I said. Back at the hidden Earth base, somewhere in the mountains of Greenland, our last recon intercepts showed movement near a system called Gravis Sigma. Not just ships, factories, massive orbiting forges, building more of those monstrous cruisers that had turned half the planet into ash. We figured it out fast. The beacon wasn't just command. It was the early warning system for Gravis Sigma. And now that it was gone, they were exposed. Juno brought up the map. "If we push now, we reach Sigma in 4 jumps. No interference, no communications. We hit their foundry before they even know what happened." Reyes looked up, his face white, but his eyes sharp. "This ship won't make it back to Earth. The core's cracked. We're leaking radiation through Deck 2, but it'll make it to Sigma." Mace stopped chewing. "You serious?" "We go now," Reyes rasped, "or they rebuild. Then next time it's not 9,900 ships, it's 90,000. I didn't hesitate. "We finish it." And just like that, the mission changed. We dumped everything that wasn't essential: cots, gear, backup systems. Made room for more weapons, more charges. If this was going to be a one-way trip, we were making it count. On the second jump, Mace passed me a flask. "Used to be whiskey," he said. "Now it's filtered coolant. Still burns, though." I took a sip. It did, but it kept me awake. Each jump pulled us deeper into enemy territory. The space around Gravis Sigma looked like a graveyard. Metal husks, broken drones, fragments of failed expansion attempts. I guess even galactic empires made mistakes. But when we dropped out of slipspace near Sigma, I understood the scale of what we were walking into. There were 5 foundry stations, each one the size of a small continent. Black towers rising from a massive orbital frame, glowing with forge light. Swarms of smaller ships buzzed between them like worker bees. Hundreds, maybe thousands. "Jesus," Mace whispered. Juno was already scanning. "That's not just shipbuilding. They're making something else down there, something big. These power signatures are off the charts." "Maybe we don't need to know," I muttered. "Maybe we just blow it up." The truth was, I was scared. Not of dying. I'd made peace with that 2 jumps ago. But I was scared we were too late. That no matter how much we burned, the Aurelians would always build more. But Rhea said something then. Something that stuck. "They thought we'd break. They thought they could erase us. What we do next tells them. Humans don't break. We burn everything behind us." That was it. No speeches. No national anthems. Just a half-dead commander, a rogue hacker, a demolition freak, and a mechanic with a rifle, riding a broken ship straight into the belly of a galactic forge. And for the first time since this war began, I knew something in my bones. We weren't just fighting back. We were making history. We didn't sneak into Gravis Sigma. We charged. The Havoc spear came in low, drifting just above the Foundry's external hull, silent and shielded only by the wreckage of dead Aurelian cruisers. Debris floated around us like steel corpses, and in the shadow of the nearest forge, we looked like just another broken thing. But broken things can still explode. Juno guided us in while rerouting coolant to the rear thrusters. Mace prepped the warheads, 2 barrels filled with fusion explosives and a concoction of chemical nasties from Earth's old black projects. Not safe, not stable, but deadly. Reyes sat in the command seat, pale as bone, wrapped in gauze, still giving orders like he had a year left in him. He didn't, but he wasn't slowing down either. "Once we're in, there's no turning back," he said. "We plant the charges on the central heat core. Blow it, and the whole structure should collapse in on itself. It'll take out half the station." "And the rest?" I asked. "We improvise." We all knew what that meant. Gravis Sigma wasn't just 1 station. It was 5. Massive foundries chained together by magnetic tethers and transport rails, each one building a piece of something far bigger than a battleship. We didn't have a name for it, but its skeleton was already visible from orbit. A colossal ring structure being assembled in space, 5 times the size of anything we'd ever seen. It looked like a superweapon, maybe even a planetary eraser. So we didn't ask questions. We went straight for the heart. The Havoc spear rammed into Dock Gate 7 at full burn. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed. The airlock buckled inward, then cracked. We breached and jumped. No finesse, just boots hitting metal and guns up. The inside was chaos. Sirens in that awful Aurelian pitch, high and low at once, like a scream underwater. Soldiers poured from side corridors, clicking and snarling, their armor flashing sickly green under the forge lights. I fired 3 rounds into the first one's chest. Mace lit the corridor behind us with an incendiary grenade. Reyes moved like death, a pistol in each hand, carving through bodies like he was already a ghost. Juno shouted, "North lift!" "That's our access to the core!" We ran. Took us 5 minutes to fight through a hallway that should have taken 30 seconds. They were everywhere. Not just warriors, but engineers, too, clawing at us with tools, trying to stop us. Desperate, afraid. They knew what was coming. We hit the lift and rode it down into the forge's belly. The heat rose with every level we passed. Flames danced along fuel lines. Rivers of molten alloy flowed beside reinforced walkways. It wasn't a factory. It was hell. And in the center of it all, the heat core. A swirling chamber of plasma held in place by gravitational stabilizers and pulsing coils. Enough energy to fuel a fleet for a decade. We were going to blow it to hell. Mace unpacked the charges, slapping one onto the base of the central coil. Juno tapped her wrist pad, synchronizing the detonators. "We've got 3 minutes after activation, maybe less." Reyes turned to me. "Briggs, you still got that flare gun?" I raised an eyebrow. "You want me to signal something in space?" He grinned. "Number, I want you to shoot it into that coolant valve over there." He pointed at a long pipe running into the core, coolant designed to keep the fusion chamber from melting down. "Heat spikes before the explosion," he said. "Chain reaction." "Right," I nodded, stepping toward it. Classic overkill. Then the elevator behind us exploded. A squad of Aurelians dropped into the chamber, rifles raised. Mace caught one in the chest with his sidearm, but he took a shot to the shoulder and went down hard. Juno ducked behind a generator, returning fire with short bursts. Reyes roared and charged, unloading both pistols. I aimed for the valve, took a breath, pulled the trigger. The flare hit the coolant pipe and ignited instantly, white-hot fire pouring from the cracked metal. The plasma inside the core roared, pulsing brighter, faster, hungrier. The stabilizers flickered. Mace groaned from the floor. "You weren't kidding about less than 3 minutes." Juno hit the detonator. "Charges armed." Reyes looked at me. "Time to go." We ran. The foundry was dying. We felt it before we saw it. Metal groaning, the air thickening, the artificial gravity stuttering under our feet like a heartbeat out of rhythm. The heat core was destabilizing, and when that thing went, it wouldn't just take this station. It would chain react through the magnetic links and drag all 5 foundries into a single apocalyptic collapse. Exactly what we wanted. We just had to get out first. Juno led the way, sprinting across the catwalks as sparks rained from the ceiling. Mace limped behind her, his shoulder scorched but still dragging his rifle like he planned to use it. Reyes was the slowest, bleeding from his side again, but he didn't complain. He just moved. I brought up the rear, firing behind us every few steps. The Aurelians weren't done. They never stopped. Even with their world falling apart, they kept coming, crawling, screeching, bleeding, firing. One got too close, and I planted a round straight through its faceplate. It dropped without a sound. "Emergency tunnel!" Juno yelled, pointing left. "I saw it on the scan. Leads out to the external tethers." We turned hard, skidding on metal soaked with coolant and alien blood, and sprinted down the narrow passage. It was cramped, barely wide enough for all 4 of us, and the walls shook with every pulse of the dying core behind us. Warning sirens wailed in every direction. When we reached the outer ring, the view nearly stopped me in my tracks. The entire foundry complex was tearing itself apart. The plasma core had ruptured, lines of molten metal cracking through the station like veins of lava. One of the tethered foundries was already coming loose, drifting and tilting wildly as explosions tore through its structure. From here, we could see it all. Hundreds of ships scrambling like insects trying to escape. Most wouldn't make it. "Dock rails," Reyes growled, voice hoarse. "Get to the launch bay." "But we don't have a ship," Mace started. "I know," he said. "We're gonna take theirs." We found the rail line, an open-air tram used to ferry parts between foundries, and sprinted along it, ducking under cables and leaping over debris. The rail shuddered beneath us, cracking with each quake from the collapsing structure. Beneath our feet was open space, nothing between us and the void but flickering force fields and faith. Then we saw it. An Aurelian gunship docked at a maintenance bay, sleek, sharp-edged, and ugly as hell, but in one piece. "I can fly it," Juno said, already sprinting ahead. We weren't alone. 2 Aurelian engineers were still working the bay, trying to get their systems online. I didn't give them the chance. I raised my rifle, fired twice, and watched both drop before they even saw us coming. Juno leapt into the cockpit and started slapping controls like she'd built the damn thing. "It's biometric locked. I need 30 seconds." Reyes dropped behind a crate and laid down cover fire while Mace and I held the flank. The deck behind us exploded again. Fire spilled through the air. The structure was caving in now, whole sections being torn free and drifting away into space. One of the Aurelians climbed over the wreckage, blood pouring from its jaw. It raised a blade. I didn't aim, I just tackled it, both of us crashing into the side of the gunship. We wrestled. It slashed across my armor, sparks flying, missing flesh but denting deep. I slammed my elbow into its throat, pulled my knife, and buried it between its eye sockets. "Briggs!" Juno shouted. "Get in!" I jumped into the rear compartment just as Reyes dragged Mace on board. The ship's engines flared. "I got it!" she shouted. "Hold on!" The ship lifted, turned, and punched through the collapsing hangar doors as the foundry behind us erupted. We didn't need to see it. We felt it. Pressure waves slamming into us, debris hammering the hull, fire chasing us through the void. Then, darkness, silence, stars. We were out. The Gravis Sigma foundries, the pride of the Aurelian war machine, were gone. A spreading cloud of light and metal and smoke where 5 stations used to be. Mace coughed and laughed. "Tell me someone got that on camera." Reyes leaned back, head against the bulkhead, blood-soaked but smiling. "No one's gonna believe it," he whispered, "but they'll feel it. We didn't win the war. Not yet. But now they knew what humans could do. We drifted for days. The stolen Aurelian gunship had no comms we could use, no link to Earth, no way to let anyone know we were alive. Most of the tech was locked behind language barriers or biometric codes. Juno did her best, cracking into one system at a time, but this wasn't like hijacking a satellite or bypassing Earth systems. This ship wasn't built for us, but it flew, and for a little while, that was enough. We limped through space, floating among the wreckage of the foundries we'd just destroyed. The Gravis Sigma system was ruined, choked with fire, ash, and twisted metal. What used to be the Aurelian Empire's most powerful construction sector was now a radioactive graveyard. And we were the ones who did it. Reyes didn't survive the second night. His wounds were too deep. We all knew he was running on borrowed time ever since the beacon strike, but he never said a word about it. Not once. He just gave orders, cracked jokes, and held us together like a spine holds up a broken body. He died in his sleep, sitting up in the command chair, looking out at the stars. We buried him in space. Juno wrapped him in a thermal blanket, and we pushed him gently from the airlock with our hands over our hearts. No words, no ceremony, just silence, and the cold black of the void swallowing up a man who never backed down. Mace didn't say anything for a full day after that, just stared out the viewport and chewed what might have been his last stick of gum. I didn't bother him. We all grieve in our own way. I kept myself busy repairing the comms array, or at least pretending to. Truth was, I didn't know if anyone was still out there to call. But on the 5th day, something answered. It wasn't Earth, it was them. A message. No video, just a transmission pinging on loop in broken human speech. "You attacked our world. Our fire. You are not allowed." It repeated twice, then silence. Juno sat at the console, staring at the waveforms, mouth half open. "They're scared," Mace chuckled, finally. "Good." Then something else came through. Another signal, scrambled, full of static, but unmistakable. Earth. It was an outpost relay near Mars. They'd picked up the explosion at Gravis Sigma. Knew something had happened. They didn't know we were alive, but they were listening. Juno boosted the signal. I leaned in and gave the shortest, most important transmission of my life. "This is Sergeant Briggs. Gravis Sigma is gone. Repeat, gone. 4 survivors, 1 KIA, returning with captured ship. Tell Earth. They're vulnerable, and they're afraid." The signal held. We were going home. The return trip wasn't glorious. We didn't ride in triumph or land to cheering crowds. Earth was still rebuilding. The sky over New York still had black streaks from the orbital bombardments. London was gone. Beijing, underwater. The scars were everywhere. But the moment our ship touched down in Alaska Base 7, something changed. People ran toward us, not with guns, with hope. A tech grabbed me before I even unstrapped my harness. "You blew up Sigma?" "Yes." "With 4 people?" "3, I said quietly. 1 didn't make it. They didn't have medals to give us. They didn't even have proper beds. But they gave us food, bandaged our wounds, and for the first time since this war began, Earth broadcast a message back into the stars. We are not prey. We are not your experiment. We are human, and we do not forget. That message spread like wildfire, through what was left of Earth's relay satellites, through scavenged Aurelian tech, through every rebel, resistance fighter, and survivor hiding in the rubble. We weren't just defending anymore, we were hunting. Weeks later, a fleet was launched. Not big, not polished, but fierce, angry, human. I stood on the deck of a new carrier named the Reyes. Not as a mechanic this time, but as a lieutenant. Juno became chief of systems. Mace led demolitions. We had a purpose now, a fire the Aurelians couldn't put out. They came with 9,900 ships. Only 17 made it back. And now, we were coming for the rest.